My name is Monica Grimm. I'm 28, and for 3 years I believed I was building something solid. Not flashy, not dramatic, just a life that felt safe. I thought safety meant love. Tyler and I met at a company networking event. He was charming in that effortless way that made other people lean in when he spoke. I was quieter, the sort who found comfort in routine and things that could be counted and balanced. He used to say he loved that about me. You make chaos make sense, Monica. I believed him. Our relationship wasn't a storm, it was a steady current. I remembered his mom's birthday, learned to make his favorite coffee exactly the way he liked 3 spoons of sugar, never two. I drove across town in the middle of the night when he caught the flu, and I stayed awake reading beside him until the fever broke. I was reliable. I thought reliability was my superpower. But over time, small cracks appeared. Hairline fractures in what I thought was our perfect glass world. It started as teasing. Must be nice to just play with spreadsheets all day, Tyler joked one night, swirling his wine. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. Then came comparisons. Madison from marketing got promoted again. She's relentless. I swear she never stops thinking about the next move. Madison. The name surfaced more and more. He admired her drive, her fire. He started going to more work dinners, coming home later, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. I told myself it was fine. New job, stress, new social circles, nothing serious. But sometimes when he looked at me, I could feel him measuring the space between us, like a man already halfway out the door. One evening, while I was cleaning up after dinner, his phone buzzed on the counter. A preview message lit up the screen. Can't wait to see you in that red dress tonight, Em. For a moment, I just stared at it. The world didn't explode or tilt, it narrowed. The sound of the refrigerator faded. My heartbeat became the only thing left. I picked up the phone. My fingerprints still unlocked it. The messages were everywhere, late-night jokes, plans to meet, small promises laced with the kind of intimacy that doesn't belong to friendship. Tyler walked out of the bedroom adjusting his tie. I'll be back late, he said casually. I looked at him and asked, Who's Madison to you? He froze. The tie slipped through his fingers. His eyes darted to the phone in my hand. For a heartbeat, I thought he might lie. Instead, he sighed, frustrated, like I'd caught him doing something mildly inconvenient. Monica, don't make this into a scene. A scene. My voice was calm, almost detached. You're cheating on me. He rubbed his forehead. God, you always make everything sound so black and white. Madison and I have a connection. She gets me. She's ambitious, spontaneous. He hesitated. Safe, I finished for him. His silence was an answer. I can't live like this forever, Monica, he said finally. Everything with you is scheduled, predictable. You're a great person, but you make life small. Madison makes it big. It was almost impressive the way he managed to dress betrayal in philosophical terms. So that's it, I asked. You're leaving me for a woman from the office because she makes you feel big. He shrugged, indifferent. I'm not leaving. I'm choosing something different. You should too. He walked out, cologne trailing behind him like a ghost. The door clicked. Silence. It wasn't the sobbing kind of silence. It was surgical, precise. It carved everything out of me until only emptiness remained. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, my hands still resting on the phone. The messages blurred together inside jokes, hotel room numbers, winking emojis. My body felt foreign, like I was watching someone else's life collapse on screen. When the phone rang, I almost didn't answer. But habit dies slower than love. Monica, dear, came the syrupy voice of Caroline Cole Tyler's mother. He told me you two had a fight. I know this must be hard, but you need to understand my Tyler. He's special. A lot of women would give anything to be with a man like him. I said nothing. Caroline continued, soft and condescending. You were lucky he chose you. A sweet girl, simple job. You should be grateful for what you had. Grateful. That word cracked something in me. Not the fragile part, but the buried one. The part that had bent over backward to be polite, accommodating, good. Grateful. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I whispered, Thank you, Caroline. You've made things very clear. I hung up, calmly, no anger, just finality. Then I opened my contacts. One by one, I erased them all. Tyler, Caroline. Every mutual friend who had ever looked at me with that faint, patronizing pity. Delete. 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 When I was done, I stared at the empty screen. It looked clean. That night, I didn't cry. I packed a single suitcase, clothes, laptop, toothbrush, nothing else. When morning came, I called my manager. Is that West Coast position still open? A pause. Yes, but you said you couldn't relocate because of your boyfriend. Not a problem anymore, I said, my voice clear, almost weightless. By the time the call ended, the decision was made. I wasn't running away. I was removing myself from a story that no longer deserved me. As the sun rose, spilling light across the apartment, I looked around at everything we'd built, the photos, the furniture, the little trinkets that once meant love. They were just objects, now silent witnesses to a version of me that had been too careful, too forgiving, too nice. That version of me was gone. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel lost. I felt free. The nice girl everyone expected me to be had just died. The morning I left felt unnervingly calm, like waking up after a long storm to find the house still standing. But everything inside rearranged. I didn't rush. I made coffee the way I always had 3 spoons of sugar, just like Tyler liked it. But when I took a sip, it tasted bitter, too sweet, artificial. I poured it down the sink. Then I packed. Not in panic, not with trembling hands, but with the detached focus of someone clearing a battlefield. I took what was mine, my clothes, my laptop, a stack of books. I left the rest behind the photos, the throw blankets, the expensive kitchen knives we'd gotten as a practice wedding gift from his aunt. I wasn't sentimental, I was surgical. Each item I didn't take was a deliberate decision to amputate a memory. On the kitchen counter sat a small plant, a rubber leaf I'd bought on our first anniversary. It had thrived under my care, stubbornly green even through winters. I hesitated, then picked it up. It was the only thing worth saving. Before I left, I took one last look around the apartment. The air was stale, thick with the ghosts of every argument we never resolved, every apology I gave too quickly. Goodbye, I said softly, not to him, not even to the place, but to the version of myself who had lived there. The drive west took 2 days, 2 long, quiet, cleansing days. The further I drove, the lighter I felt. By the time the skyline of my old city vanished in the rearview mirror, I could almost feel the invisible thread that tethered me to Tyler snap in two. When I reached the coast, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the oppressive kind that follows heartbreak, but the clean kind that exists before something new begins. I rented a small furnished apartment in a seaside town that barely registered on a map. From my window, I could see the ocean stretching endlessly, its rhythm both foreign and comforting. That first night, I unpacked my single suitcase. Clothes in one drawer, laptop on the table, the rubber plant by the window where it would catch the morning sun. No framed photos, no traces of us. I lay down on the unfamiliar bed, listening to the distant crash of waves. It was strange how peace could feel so heavy. My chest ached, but it was a clean ache. The next morning, I called my manager again. "Monica, are you sure about this transfer?" he asked. "It's a big move." "I'm sure," I said. "I need a change of scenery." He didn't push. Maybe he heard something in my voice that told him not to. By Monday, I was officially part of the West Coast team. New desk, new coworkers, new city. When they asked why I moved, I simply said, personal growth. No one questioned it. At lunch, my new colleague, Mila, smiled across the table. "You seem so calm." Most people who move across the country are falling apart. I smiled faintly. Maybe I already did. In the evenings, I walked along the beach, tracing the edge of the water with bare feet. The ocean never judged. It just pulled back and returned again, indifferent to the tiny dramas that consumed us on land. Some nights, I imagined Tyler and Madison loud rooftop dinners, late-night texts, ambition wrapped in attraction. It didn't hurt. It just felt distant, like a movie I'd once watched but couldn't quite remember the plot of. The plant by my window grew new leaves that month. I watered it every morning before work. It was thriving. So was I, though I didn't realize it yet. One evening, I sat on the balcony laptop, open ocean breeze, lifting my hair. I started typing not work reports this time, but a list. A list of all the things I had lost. And then next to each one, what I had gained. Lost a boyfriend who preferred chaos over commitment. Gained silence that didn't demand explanation. Lost a life built around someone else's dreams. Gained room for my own. Lost approval. Gained freedom. When I reached the bottom of the page, I paused, then typed one last line. I didn't run away. I reclaimed myself. I closed the laptop. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up mid-dream. The following week, I stood on the beach at sunrise holding a seashell I'd found buried in the sand. Inside, faintly, I could hear the sea's echo, a loop of sound that went on and on. It reminded me of what Caroline once said. You should be grateful. But I wasn't grateful anymore. I was done shrinking myself to fit someone else's version of happiness. As the sun broke over the horizon, warm light spread across the water. I whispered to no one in particular, "This is what starting over feels like." Then I smiled soft but certain. I wasn't the same woman who'd begged to be enough. I wasn't a shadow waiting for forgiveness. I was becoming something stronger. And somewhere deep down, I knew the people I'd left behind would one day wonder what happened to the quiet, predictable girl they thought they knew. They'd search for her in memories and messages, but she'd be gone. Because the truth was simple. The girl they broke had learned how to rebuild. The sea became my clock. Mornings began with the tide sliding against the sand, whispering like it was promising something. Evenings ended with the same rhythm, softer, slower, reminding me that not everything needs to rush to heal. My days were simple: work, coffee, long walks, silence. But in that simplicity, I began to rediscover myself. At first, the quiet scared me. I wasn't used to a life without someone else's voice filling the spaces. Tyler's opinions had been everywhere: what I should wear, how I should laugh softer in public, which restaurants made me seem cultured. Now there was only me. And me wasn't so bad. I started going to the small gym 2 blocks from my apartment. The owner, an old surfer named Dan, never asked questions. He just nodded when I came in, pointed to the weights, and said, "Pain's cheaper than therapy." He wasn't wrong. Every repetition was a purge. Every drop of sweat felt like proof that I could rebuild something stronger than what had been broken. The softness that had once made me approachable hardened into purpose. My body changed, but more importantly, so did my posture. My shoulders no longer curved inward. I took up space. And for once, I didn't apologize for it. At work, people noticed. "Monica, your reports have this clarity," my manager said one afternoon. "You've become more decisive. It's refreshing." I smiled, though part of me wondered if I'd just stopped asking for permission to exist. During breaks, my coworker Mila would ask me to lunch. She was warm, funny, curious, but never invasive. We'd talk about travel, about places that looked like freedom. I never mentioned Tyler, and she never asked. She just seemed to understand that silence sometimes says more than words. One Friday, as we walked back to the office, she said, "You seem like someone who's finally breathing after being underwater." I laughed softly. Maybe I drowned once. Now I just float better. 2 months passed before I heard the first echo from my old life. A text from an unknown number. "Hey, Monica, it's Owen. Remember me, Tyler's old friend? Just wanted to say you were right to get out." My heart skipped, not from fear, but from surprise. "What do you mean?" I replied. "He and Madison blew up. Big time. She got him fired. Guess ambition doesn't look as sexy when it's screaming in your face." I stared at the message, waiting for something: bitterness, vindication, anything. But all I felt was quiet. Owen continued. "He's crashing at his mom's. Keeps saying you overreacted. Some people never learn, huh?" I typed back simply, "Thanks for letting me know. Hope you're doing well." And that was it. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. It was strange how little his downfall mattered to me. It wasn't my story anymore. That night, I walked down to the beach. The moonlight painted the waves in silver, and I thought about how Tyler used to say, "You're too calm. Nothing shakes you." He was wrong. I'd been shaken once hard enough to break, but I'd rebuilt quietly, piece by piece, in a place where no one could find me. The ocean didn't care about heartbreak. It kept moving, and maybe that's why I loved it. It never asked me to explain myself. Weeks became months. The town began to feel like home. People started greeting me by name at the coffee shop. I even joined a small weekend hiking group, something old Monica would have been too self-conscious to do. There was a moment halfway up a steep trail overlooking the ocean when I realized I hadn't thought about Tyler for an entire week. Not once. I stopped breathing in the salt air, the sun warming my skin. It felt like a quiet victory. When I got home that evening, the light in my apartment was golden. The plant on the windowsill had grown 2 new leaves. I ran my fingers along them and whispered, "We made it." A soft buzz interrupted the peace, my phone lighting up again with an unknown number. This time the message was shorter. "Monica, please, I need to talk to you." The ache that used to follow those words never came. I deleted it without reading further. Because healing, I was learning, doesn't mean you forget the wound. It means you stop letting the person who caused it press on the scar. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window. The reflection staring back wasn't a stranger, it was me. But sharper, clearer. I thought of what Caroline had said, that I should be grateful he ever chose me. The irony made me smile. Because she was right, in a way. I was grateful, not for being chosen, for being discarded. Because it forced me to see the truth I had spent years being a foundation for someone else's life. Now I was building my own. The next morning I wrote in my journal, "Healing isn't soft. It's steel learning to bend without breaking. I closed the notebook, feeling something new, something calm and powerful pulsing beneath the surface. I wasn't chasing closure anymore. I was living it. It began quietly like a ripple in still water. The first message arrived at 10:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. Unknown number, Monica. It's Tyler. Please, we need to talk. For a long time, I just stared at the screen, the glow lighting up my otherwise dark apartment. My wine glass was half full, untouched. The sound of waves filtered faintly through the open window. I didn't reply. The message hung there unanswered like a ghost tapping on glass. 2 days later came another. I made a mistake. Everything's falling apart. Madison lied. I lost my job. I need you. Please. I read it twice. Then once more, not out of curiosity, but to confirm something, there was no apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just need. That had always been the problem. Tyler never loved me. He loved what I did for him. My steadiness, my quiet, my endless forgiveness. He missed the safety, not me. I deleted the message. The next week brought more, a cascade of digital desperation. So that's it. You're just going to ignore me. I know you're seeing these, Monica. You're really that cold. You used to care about me. Each one hit my phone like a small thud, but the sound no longer reached me. I didn't block him right away. I wanted to observe, to see how people like him unravel when silence replaces the sympathy they expect. By message 7, the tone changed. You're pathetic. You think you're better than me now. You're just lonely. You'll come back. I smiled faintly. He was right about one thing. I was lonely sometimes. But loneliness wasn't a punishment anymore. It was proof that I'd stopped filling my life with noise. I turned off my phone and went to bed. The following week, a different number buzzed. When I answered, a nervous voice rushed in. Monica, hey, it's Sarah. Remember me? Sarah, one of Tyler's old coworkers. She'd been Madison's drinking buddy, always smiling too wide, laughing too loud. What do you need, Sarah? I asked. Look, this is awkward, but Tyler's not in a good place. He's been staying with his mom, drinking a lot. He keeps saying he misses you, that he made a huge mistake. I stayed quiet. He's not himself, Monica. He really needs closure. You're the only one who can help him. I almost laughed. Closure. What people really mean when they say that word is, I want relief from the consequences of my actions. Sarah, I said gently, tell him I wish him peace, but I'm not his therapist. Come on, you can't just... I can, I interrupted, my tone calm but final, because I already did. Then I hung up. I didn't feel guilt. I felt clean. That night, the past tried one more door. The call came late 11:58 p.m. The name that appeared on the screen froze me for half a second. Caroline Cole. Of course. I almost didn't pick up. Almost. But something inside me wanted to hear it to finally close the loop. Monica, she began, her voice stripped of its usual sugar. You need to talk to him. No, Caroline, I said softly. I don't. She sighed sharply. He's miserable. Madison ruined his life. He's living on my couch, jobless, ashamed. You of all people know how gentle his heart is. Gentle. I almost choked on the word. Caroline, I said evenly. Do you remember what you told me the last time we spoke? A pause. I might have said some things in anger. You told me I should be grateful he gave me a chance, that I should walk away with dignity. I did exactly that. She went quiet. You need to let this go, I continued, because I already have. Her voice sharpened. Don't be cruel, Monica. He's human. So am I said, and hung up. Then I blocked her number. The next morning, the sun came through the window, warm and indifferent. The plant by the window had a new leaf again. Life doesn't pause for other people's regret. As I watered it, I realized something. Silence wasn't just absence anymore. It had become language. Every unanswered message was a sentence. Every blocked call, a paragraph. Together they told the story of my boundaries. Weeks passed. The messages slowed, then stopped. My phone was finally quiet again. Sometimes I wondered if Tyler understood what really happened, not just between us, but to me. He hadn't lost the nice girl. He had created the woman who no longer needed his validation to breathe. One night I walked down to the pier. The water shimmered under the streetlights, silver ripples stretching into the dark. I leaned on the railing, the salt wind cool against my face. Behind me, laughter drifted from a nearby restaurant. Life went on messy, loud, alive. I smiled faintly and whispered into the wind. Some ghosts don't haunt you. They just linger long enough for you to realize you're not afraid anymore. Then I turned, heading back toward home, each step lighter than the last. Because sometimes freedom doesn't come with fireworks. It arrives quietly when the past stops knocking and you stop listening. A full year had passed since I'd left 12 quiet months that had reshaped me in ways I hadn't noticed until they felt permanent. When an email from work appeared with the subject line "Client Visit," Central Office, my chest tightened. It was the city I had escaped, the city where Tyler still lived. For a second, I hovered over the decline button, but then I didn't. Real healing, I'd learned, wasn't about hiding from the past. It was about walking straight into it and realizing it no longer had power over you. The flight landed just after noon. The same skyline rose in the distance, familiar, yet strangely smaller, like a place I'd already outgrown. My meeting ended early, and as I walked through the downtown streets, I passed the coffee shop we used to visit every Sunday morning. I hadn't planned to stop, but habit, or maybe closure, guided my feet through the door. The bell above it jingled, still the same dull sound that used to signal his arrival. I ordered a black coffee, no sugar. Old me would have drowned it in sweetness, but I'd lost my taste for that. The air smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, and I sat near the window, letting the city blur behind the glass. For a few peaceful minutes, I forgot to remember him. Then a voice broke through the quiet. "Monica." It wasn't loud, just soft enough to make my heart pause for half a beat. I turned. Tyler stood near the door holding a paper cup. He looked thinner, his hair unkempt, the crisp confidence he used to wear like armor now replaced with something duller. His eyes darted toward me, uncertain. For a long second, neither of us spoke. "Tyler," I said finally, my tone calm, neutral. He blinked as though saying my name confirmed I was real. "You look different." "I am different." He hesitated, then gestured toward the empty chair across from me. "Can I sit?" I glanced at my watch. A few minutes. He sat down, shoulders hunched forward, a posture I'd never seen on him before. The silence that followed was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable, not for me. For him, though, it seemed unbearable. "I've been trying to reach you." He started, his voice low, the same tone he used to use when he wanted sympathy. "You changed your number, blocked everyone. You just disappeared." "I didn't disappear," I said, stirring my coffee. "I just stopped being where you left me." He opened his mouth, closed it again. "I deserve that," he muttered. I didn't answer. Deserve wasn't a word I felt he'd earned. "I messed everything up," he continued. "Madison wasn't what I thought. She used me, took everything. My job, my savings gone. I lost everything, Monica." He looked up at me, eyes wet with something between regret and self-pity. "You were the only person who ever really cared about me." I studied him quietly. There was a time I would have melted at those words, would have reached across the table to comfort him. Now they just sounded like noise, an old song I no longer remembered the tune of. "You didn't lose me, Tyler," I said softly. "You threw me away." He winced as if I'd struck him, but I didn't flinch. "You don't understand," he insisted. "I thought I wanted excitement. I thought I needed someone who challenged me, who made life feel bigger. But I was wrong. You were home." I leaned back in my chair, meeting his eyes without anger. "Then it sounds like you learned something." "That's good." His brow furrowed. "That's all you have to say." "What else do you want, Tyler?" Forgiveness, a reset button. He looked desperate now, leaning forward. "I just want you back, please. I know you still feel something." "I do," I said after a moment. "I feel peace. And I'm not giving it up." He sat back defeated. "You used to love me." "I did, but the woman who loved you doesn't exist anymore." For a long time he stared at me, trying to find traces of her. The quiet, soft-spoken girl who once made excuses for his cruelty. She was gone, and he knew it. And finally he asked, barely above a whisper, "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No, hate takes effort. You don't get that from me anymore." He swallowed hard, voice cracking. "Then what am I to you?" I didn't even have to think. A lesson. The words seemed to land like a weight. He lowered his gaze, fingers tightening around his cup until it crumpled slightly. I stood sliding my chair back with a calm steadiness that seemed to unnerve him. "Goodbye, Tyler." "Monica, wait, please." I paused at the doorway just long enough to look at him one last time. "You once told me I made life too small. You were wrong. I just refused to make myself smaller to fit yours." Then I walked out. The sunlight outside was bright, almost blinding, the kind that makes you squint, but also reminds you that you're alive. I took a deep breath and started walking. No destination, no backward glance. Through the cafe window, I could still see him sitting there motionless, staring at the empty space I'd left behind. But it wasn't sadness I felt, it was release. The city stretched before me, loud and restless, yet I moved through it lightly untouched. I'd thought closure would feel dramatic, cinematic, maybe even tearful. Instead, it felt quiet, almost simple. As my plane lifted off later that evening, I looked out at the city lights below, fading dots in the dark, just like memories that had finally run out of ways to haunt me. I realized then that closure doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just the peace of knowing you no longer need the last word. Tyler was behind me, the past folded neatly into distance, and ahead was only open sky. Back home, the air felt lighter. The coastal wind carried that familiar mix of salt and sun, and for the first time since I'd returned from the city, I realized I hadn't once replayed that encounter in my head. There was no anger, no triumph, no regret, just a quiet certainty that I had closed something that once defined me. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it, minimalist, peaceful sunlight spilling across the wooden floor. The rubber plant on the windowsill had grown another leaf in my absence. It stood tall and green, a silent witness to everything I'd survived. I made tea instead of coffee that morning. Coffee had always been our ritual, his ritual, and I didn't owe him any piece of my day anymore. I sat by the window listening to the soft hum of the ocean below. It no longer sounded lonely. It sounded alive. 2 days later, I received a message from Mike, one of my old coworkers from the city. Hey, Monica ran into Sarah. She said Tyler's still living with his mom working some admin job he hates. He tells people you changed, became cold. They can't figure out what happened to that sweet girl. I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes when something no longer hurts but once did. Thanks, Mike, I replied. Take care of yourself. I didn't need to say more. The people who had once written my story were now just distant narrators, still trying to understand a version of me that no longer existed. That night, I walked to the beach. The sand was cool under my feet, the moon a silver coin above the dark waves. Each step I took left a footprint that the tide immediately reached for, erasing it before I could even look back. For a long time, I just stood there letting the wind wrap around me. The world felt wide and quiet, but this quiet wasn't empty, it was mine. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who would have waited for him to change, the one who believed that love meant patience, compromise, endurance. She'd lived her life trying to be someone's anchor, but anchors only hold you down if you forget to pull them back up. I had finally lifted mine. I started writing again in my journal, the same one I had once filled with lists of what I'd lost and what I'd gained. On the last page, I wrote, "Healing isn't revenge. It's not proving you're better without them. It's waking up one morning and realizing you didn't think about them at all." I closed the notebook and left it on the table. I didn't need to write more. The story was finished. A few weeks later, I invited Mila and a few new friends over for dinner. The sound of laughter filled the apartment, the real kind, the unforced kind. For the first time in years, I looked around and felt proud of the life I'd built, not because it was perfect, but because it was mine alone. After they left, I stood by the window again. The city lights shimmered across the water. My reflection looked back at me, not a stranger this time, but a woman who had rebuilt herself from the ruins of someone else's choices. They were still wondering what happened to the nice girl, but she hadn't vanished. She'd evolved. I didn't disappear when I left. I became visible for the first time. Because freedom doesn't come from running away. It comes from standing still and realizing you've already arrived. The waves kept moving, the night kept breathing, and I finally understood what peace really meant. I didn't need closure anymore. I was the closure.